On the subject of workflows, whether it's a landscape or a portrait, I use generally the same workflow. The first step I do is I make sure that the levels are good. The white point, the black point, and the midtones. Make sure that the picture is looking where I want it to look as far as that. Then I'm going to go in and take a look at the color. Make sure that there's no problems with the color. If there are, I'm going to correct it. Then I'm going to go in and add contrast to the picture. Then I'm going to maybe do a color boost, and then I'll definitely sharpen it, and then that'll be my entire workflow. Now, each one of these steps, I might do 10 different methods for each one of these steps, and we'll get to those in later videos. So with any picture I bring in, I'm going to go ahead, and the first thing I'm going to do is create a levels adjustment. So I'm going to go into the levels tool, which can be accessed from the adjustment quick bar, or you can go in and edit adjustments levels. The triangles down here, there's three main triangles to deal with. There's the highlights, the shadows, and the midtones. So if I take the highlights and I drag it in, it's going to make the highlights brighter. It's going to make the whatever is the brightest in the picture, it's going to make it just that much brighter. There's a quick way to see kind of how you're influencing the picture by either holding down the Alt or the Option key and then grabbing that triangle, and you'll start to see colors come in. These are the colors that are starting to clip on the highlights. So if you see red, that means the red channel's clipping. Yellow or green means the green channel's clipping. Yellow means the red and the green channel are clipping. And then of course there's blue and all the other colors. So what I generally do is I bring it in to where I start to see the channels clipping, then I just gradually pull it off. So as far as I take it out. Same thing with the shadows. I'll bring those in. When I see the clipping, I'll bring it back. And then I'll let go. Then the midtones, all I'm going to do is, this is just by taste. I want to look at the picture. This is a little bit too bright. It's a little bit too dark. I want somewhere in between, something I can work with. I don't want to start with a picture that's too dark. If these trees are too dark down here, then it makes it hard to deal with it. What I'm going to do with any kind of curves adjustment or any kind of contrast adjustment. Same thing with the highlights. If the clouds or the mountains are a little bit too bright, when I get it into when I get it in and start doing contrast adjustment to it, I'm not going to have easy time with it. So I bring it in someplace that's kind of neutral on the highlights and shadows, something I have good information on both, and then I'm going to call that done. Okay. For my layer blend mode, I'm just doing a luminosity change. It understands I'm doing a luminosity change, but just as habit, I'm going to make sure that it's just attacking the luminosity. All right, and when I'm happy with it, I'll go ahead and flatten the image so that I just have the background. After I set my levels, the next thing I'm going to do is color correction. So my simple way of doing color correction is I'll pick a point that I know is white, I'll pick a point that I know is black, and then I will, if I know a mid-tone like color of a tree, color of the grass, then I can go ahead and use that information if I have it. If not, I can do a average blur and try to set that to gray. I think that's the method we're going to use here. So I'll start by bringing up the eyedropper tool. I'll hit the I button and then bring out the info palette, which is F8. All right, in the info palette, if you have the eyedropper tool or any tool, you'll see what the RGB numbers are. So I know that the snow in this picture is white, so I can just go in here and pick something that's kind of a bright white. So I'll pick something in here, hold down the shift key to place a color sample point. Make sure that your sample size is 3 by 3. Default is point sample. That may not give you the good information, just in case you dropped it on something like a piece of rock or something that you didn't see. All right, the next thing I'm going to do is I will try to find a black point. One of the ways to do this is to create a threshold tool and drag it down to about 5. Okay, and what you're going to want to do is get into the area where you see it and go above and below and see where it's just starting to turn to about 5. So if I zoom in here, I get a nice cluster, drop my pointer on there, and you'll see it's about 2, 4, and 2. Okay, that's good. It's not 0. If any one of these numbers are 0, you could be worried about it clipping there and not give you good color information. Okay, I don't need this threshold anymore, so I'll just go ahead and delete it. And then I'll zoom back out, and I will go ahead and start and put a curve in. I'm going to focus on the white first. My red number is 252, my green is 241, and my blue is 227. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to find the biggest number, and I'm going to push my my green and blue to that number. So the red's my biggest number, so I'll go to the green channel. I'll grab this top right point, and then with my arrow keys, I'll just hit the left arrow key and start bringing the color up till I see that the green number matches the red number, which get it close. Then I'll go change it to the blue channel. Go grab the upper right hand corner, left arrow key until I'm watching this number right here, until that blue number comes up and meets. So I've got all about the same. Alright, I'm going to go in the shadows. It works the opposite way. Going to the low numbers, so I have to adjust the green to get that to match the red and the blue. So go pick that and use my right arrow key, hit it once, and I'm there. Alright, so now what I've done is I've corrected the top end, so my whites are white, and my black, which I hope this is black, is black. Alright. Next thing I'm going to do is go in and copy my background layer. And I'm going to do a average blur. So I'm going to go to filter menu, go blur, average. And what this does is this is taking the average color of the whole image and created a solid color out of that. Now I want that color to be gray. Right now it's not. It's close to gray, but it's kind of a reddish green. So if I go back to my curves adjustment and go to properties, I've got these 3 eyedroppers here. The middle one is the midtones. If I grab that while I'm on RGB and touch that, it will actually correct all the numbers so that they're close to each other. Alright, so if you look, the numbers are all 120, 121, 120. So I'm good there. Alright. So again, I'm done with this background layer. I can go ahead and trash it. And now I've got better color. I can toggle the visibility of the layer, and you can see that my sky is now bluer. Snow's white, grass is greener. Once I'm good with it, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the layer mode, and I want to change that to color. Okay. When I was actually adjusting it, the numbers, the highlights and the midtones and the shadows, I was actually changing the luminosity at the same time. So in order to protect the luminosity so that I have more control when I make the contrast, I want to go ahead and change that to color mode. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and flatten the image again. So after I get the color correct, I add contrast to it. I generally do a color boost. In this image, I don't really need a color boost, and I'm just going to keep it this way. I'll get into how I do color boost in other videos. It's the last thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and sharpen. Now there's a couple different ways of doing it. I never want to mess around with the background layer. I want to go ahead and create a copy of that. So I'm gonna do a sharpening to this. I'm going to zoom in to a place where I know I want to get some sharpness, and I want to make sure that I'm looking at it at either 100 or 200%. I don't want to look at it at 30%. Definitely don't want to look at it at 66%. 100% is the best. In this case, I'm going to look at it at 200% so you can see a little bit better about what's happening in sharpening. I'll go ahead and start sharpening. The tool I use is the unsharpen mask. And what I'll do is I'll first determine my radius that I want to sharpen. So I'll just go ahead and pull the amount all the way to the max, and then start slowly bringing the radius up until I see it just get sharp. So I think there's probably good. Now I'm going to bring back, I have my threshold at 0. I'm going to go ahead and bring back the rate or the amount until I get it sharp, but not too overly sharp where I'm damaging the image. And this is something that you'll just get used to as you're doing it. Now the threshold, what the threshold is that if you look at areas like this where the snow is nice and smooth, you could actually get some artifacts from sharpening where you'll start seeing texture in the snow that didn't exist, or texture in a face that you didn't exist. I'm seeing texture in the sky that wasn't supposed to be there. What threshold does is it looks at the radius at which you're going to apply sharpening. So as you move the radius out, less of the image is going to be impacted by the sharpening. If I pull it out to 3, you start to see the sky, the texture in the sky go away a little bit more. So I use the up arrow. I find a point where usually between 5 and 7, 13 on a noisy image, somewhere in there, you'll see that go away. Now I can click on and off on the preview and it's going to change the screen, and you can see it before. That's before, and that's after sharpening. You can look in here and you can see just how much clearer that became. I'm going to hit OK. And I'm going to go ahead and flatten image. And I'm done.